I spent 10 years trying to save a marriage that was already dead. When Amanda demanded a divorce, she cornered me in our kitchen with that smirk I'd grown to dread. "I want the house, and half your future earnings," she said coldly. "You can't afford a lawyer to fight me." I just nodded and replied, "You're right." She thought she'd won. But sometimes life gives you an unexpected card to play. Before I continue this story, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe for more real-life stories. I met Amanda 12 years ago at a charity gala in downtown Boston. I was there representing my software company, where I worked as a mid-level engineer. Nothing special, but it paid the bills and gave me satisfaction. Amanda walked into the room wearing a stunning blue dress that immediately caught my attention. Her confident stride and radiant smile drew everyone's gaze, including mine. She was working in public relations for a large fashion brand at the time. When our eyes met across the crowded room, I felt something I had never experienced before. We talked for hours that night, exchanging stories about our lives, dreams, and ambitions. Amanda came from an affluent background with parents who had provided her with every advantage. I was instantly captivated by her charm and energy. Our first date was at a small Italian restaurant near the harbor. I remember feeling nervous about impressing someone who had clearly grown accustomed to finer things. But Amanda seemed genuinely interested in me, laughing at my jokes and asking thoughtful questions about my work. She touched my hand across the table and told me she found my passion for coding endearing. That night, walking her home under the stars, I felt like the luckiest man alive. We dated for 2 years before I proposed. Those days were filled with weekend getaways, surprise dinner dates, and long conversations about building a future together. I believed we were perfectly aligned in our values and goals. When I got down on one knee at the same charity event where we first met, Amanda's eyes filled with tears as she said yes. Our wedding was a small, intimate ceremony. We decided to keep it simple, partly because my family lived across the country and couldn't all make it. My older brother Jake, who was building his reputation as a lawyer in San Francisco, sent his regrets along with a generous gift. Amanda seemed disappointed by the modest celebration, but I promised her that we would have the life she deserved once I climbed higher in my career. Shortly after getting married, we found a beautiful craftsman home in a good neighborhood. It stretched my finances to the limit, but Amanda fell in love with it instantly. I paid the down payment using my savings and a loan from my parents. Amanda contributed what she could, which wasn't much, but I didn't mind. I was happy to provide for us while she focused on advancing her career. The first 3 years went relatively smoothly. I took on extra projects and worked late to make sure we could afford our mortgage payments and Amanda's lifestyle expectations. She had expensive taste in clothing, furniture, and experiences. When I gently suggested we might need to budget more carefully, she would become defensive. "My friends all have nicer things than I do, Louis," she would say. "Do you want me to look poor when I meet them for lunch?" I began noticing small warning signs. Amanda would roll her eyes whenever I talked about my job or complained about being tired. She showed little interest in visiting my family during holidays, claiming they made her feel uncomfortable. When my parents sent homemade gifts for Christmas, she would place them in closets out of sight. "Your family just doesn't understand quality," she explained when I questioned her about it. Still, I loved her. I believed that every marriage had its challenges, and I was committed to making ours work. I picked up even more overtime, determined to give Amanda the lifestyle she clearly desired. The more hours I put in, the less we saw each other. The distance between us grew imperceptibly at first, like a small crack that would eventually become a chasm. By our 5th anniversary, Amanda had changed jobs 3 times each position, more prestigious than the last. Meanwhile, I remained with the same company, working diligently toward a promotion. Amanda began comparing me unfavorably to her coworkers' husbands and her friends' spouses, who were executives or business owners. "When are you going to step up your game, Louis?" she would ask during dinner. "Todd just bought Sarah a vacation home in the Hamptons, and he's only 35. These comments stung, but I swallowed my pride and promised I was working toward bigger things. Inside, though, I began to wonder if Amanda had married me, expecting a different trajectory than the one I was on. 7 years into our marriage, an opportunity for advancement finally arose at my company. A senior engineering position opened up, and given my track record and dedication, I was the leading internal candidate. For weeks, I prepared for the interview, creating presentations and staying late to ensure all my current projects were flawlessly executed. Amanda seemed to take renewed interest in my career during this time. This could finally be your chance to make some real money, she said already, planning how we would spend my potential new salary. The day before my final interview, the company announced a major restructuring. My department was being consolidated with another, and the position I had been pursuing was eliminated. When I came home with the news, dejected and seeking comfort, Amanda's reaction cut deep. Are you serious? You couldn't even secure the promotion before they canceled it. God, Lewis, I'm beginning to think you'll never move up in your career. There was no sympathy, no encouragement. Just disappointment and criticism. That night, as Amanda slept peacefully beside me, I stared at the ceiling, feeling completely alone in my marriage. A few weeks later, I came home early from work with a migraine. As I entered quietly through the side door, I heard Amanda on the phone in her home office. She was speaking in the hushed, secretive tone she used when she didn't want me to overhear. Yes, I've already spoken with him twice, she said to whoever was on the other end. He assures me that given the length of our marriage and Mark's income, I should be entitled to at least half of everything plus ongoing support. My blood ran cold. Mark was my name, in her contacts, not Lewis. She had been using a different name when talking about me to others. I froze in the hallway, barely breathing. The house is the priority, she continued. I've put up with this disappointing situation for years. I deserve to keep the home at minimum. I backed away silently and left the house, driving aimlessly around the city while my mind raced. When I returned hours later, I pretended nothing had happened. That night, I waited until Amanda fell asleep, then carefully checked her laptop that she had left open on her desk. What I found shattered any remaining illusions about our marriage. There were emails with a divorce attorney dating back 6 months. Spreadsheets detailing our assets with notes about what she believed she could claim. Messages with her friends discussing her exit strategy from our marriage. One particular exchange with her friend Tanya was especially painful. "How much longer do you have to stay with him?" Tanya had asked. "Just until I get all my ducks in a row," Amanda replied. "The lawyer says timing is everything. I need to establish the right circumstances before filing." I also discovered searches about home ownership laws in our state and how to maximize alimony payments. She had been planning this methodically while sleeping beside me each night and accepting the life my hard work provided. The following months were a special kind of hell. Now, aware of Amanda's intentions, I noticed how she had been deliberately creating distance between us. She spent more evenings out with friends and returned home smelling of expensive cologne that wasn't mine. When I tried to reconnect with her suggesting date nights or vacations, she always had excuses ready. Our home, once our shared dream, began to feel like a battlefield. Amanda started buying expensive new furniture and art without consulting me. When I questioned these purchases, she dismissed my concerns. "It's an investment in our future," she would say, though we both knew she was only investing in her future. The final shock came when I received a call from our bank about a loan application with my signature on it, a loan I had never applied for. Somehow, Amanda had taken out a substantial personal loan in both our names with papers that appeared to have my signature. When confronted, she claimed it was for household expenses, but refused to provide details. That night, we had our biggest argument ever. I finally told her I knew about her meetings with the divorce attorney and her plans to take our house. "You've been spying on me," she shouted immediately, shifting to offense rather than addressing her deception. "You've been planning to leave me and take everything we've built together." I countered, my voice breaking despite my efforts to stay calm. Her expression changed then from defensive to calculating. "Well, now that everything's on the table," she said coldly, "yes, I want a divorce. And if you fight me on what I deserve, I'll make sure you regret it." The woman I had loved for a decade was looking at me like I was nothing more than an obstacle to her happiness, a resource to be drained and discarded. 3 nights later, Amanda arranged what she called a civilized dinner to discuss our separation. She wore an expensive new dress and had her hair done as if celebrating a victory. I arrived home from work exhausted emotionally and physically to find her sitting at our dining table with papers spread before her and a bottle of wine already half empty. "I've taken the liberty of outlining a fair settlement," she said, sliding a document toward me. "I'll keep the house since my career and social connections are established here. You'll transfer half of your retirement savings to me immediately, and I'll need support payments for 5 years to help me adjust." I scanned the document, noting that her definition of fair left me with virtually nothing from our decade together. When I pointed this out, her eyes narrowed. Let's be realistic, Lewis. You can't afford a lawyer good enough to fight mine. My father has connections with the best divorce attorneys in the city. They'll destroy whatever bargain basement representation you scrounge up. Her smirk, as she delivered this ultimatum, made something inside me finally snap. All the years of sacrificing, compromising, and believing in our partnership crystallized into a moment of perfect clarity. I had been a fool, but I would not remain one. You're right, I said quietly. I can't afford to fight you. Amanda's smile widened with triumph. She believed she had won. I'll have my lawyer send the official papers next week. Just sign them and we can both move on with our lives, she said already, turning her attention to her phone, dismissing me from what she clearly viewed as a successfully concluded business transaction. That night I lay awake in our guest bedroom, where I had been sleeping for weeks. As the digital clock turned to 2:00 a.m., I reached for my phone and sent a text I should have sent months, perhaps years earlier. Jake, I need your help. It's urgent. My brother and I had grown distant over the years. His meteoric rise in his legal career had taken him to San Francisco, where he had become one of the most sought-after divorce attorneys on the West Coast. His reputation was fearsome, his rates astronomical. We spoke only a few times a year, usually on birthdays and holidays. But within minutes of my text, my phone rang. Lewis. What's wrong? Jake's voice, so similar to our father's, brought an unexpected lump to my throat. I told him everything, the words pouring out in a torrent of hurt and betrayal. Jake listened without interrupting until I had nothing left to say. Book me a flight for tomorrow, he said finally. Don't tell Amanda anything. Act like you're going along with her plans. I'll handle the rest. The next morning, Amanda announced she would be staying with a friend for a few days to give us both space. I nodded meekly, playing the role of the defeated husband she expected me to be. As soon as she left, Jake arrived. We spent the weekend huddled at my kitchen table, going through financial records, text messages, and emails. She's made some serious mistakes, Jake said, his expression grim as he reviewed the documents. That loan with your forged signature, that's fraud. The hidden accounts I've found. Failure to disclose assets. And I've only just started digging. For the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. Jake explained the strategy: we would allow Amanda to file for divorce on her terms, appearing to offer no resistance. Then, when she least expected it, Jake would make his appearance and change the entire dynamic. The look on her face will be worth my fee, Jake joked, though he had already refused to let me pay him anything. Which, by the way, would be about $40,000 for a case like this. Over the next 2 weeks, I gathered additional evidence under Jake's guidance. Bank statements showing Amanda's excessive personal spending from our joint account. Records of assets she had hidden from me. Even evidence suggesting infidelity, though Jake advised that was more for leverage than legal standing in our state. The key is to be completely prepared before showing our hand, Jake counseled. Right now, Amanda thinks she's holding all the cards. Let her keep believing that. When the divorce papers arrived via courier, I signed them without contest, just as Amanda expected. She called that evening, her voice smug with satisfaction. I see you're being sensible about this, she said. The hearing is next Monday. Just show up, answer the judge's questions with a yes or no, and this will all be over quickly. I'll be there. I promised, managing to keep any hint of what awaited her out of my voice. The weekend before our court date, Jake and I finalized our counter-strategy. He would not officially file an appearance until the last possible moment to maintain the element of surprise. The goal wasn't just to win, but to expose Amanda's calculated deception and financial manipulation. Are you ready for this? Jake asked as we reviewed our documentation one final time. I thought about the decade I had spent loving someone who had been planning to discard me all along. About the future I had believed in and worked toward. More than ready, I answered with conviction. The morning of our court hearing arrived with perfect fall-weather sunshine streaming through golden leaves. I dressed in my best suit, the one I had worn to business meetings when trying to impress clients. Jake had already left for the courthouse separately, carrying a briefcase filled with evidence of Amanda's schemes. When I arrived at the courthouse, Amanda was standing on the steps with her attorney, an older man with silver hair and an expensive suit. She looked immaculate in a conservative navy dress that probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. When she spotted me approaching alone, a satisfied smile crossed her face. Glad you could make it, she said, her tone condescending. This should only take about an hour of your time. Her lawyer gave me a cursory nod, clearly viewing me as a simple formality in his day not worth professional courtesy. They turned and entered the courthouse ahead of me, Amanda whispering something to her attorney that made him chuckle. Inside the courtroom, I took a seat on the petitioner's side alone as planned. Amanda and her lawyer arranged their papers at their table, occasionally glancing in my direction with poorly concealed pity. The judge had not yet entered, and several other cases were being prepared around the room. At precisely 9:30 a.m., the bailiff called for all to rise as Judge Harriet Winters entered the courtroom. A formidable woman in her 60s, with piercing eyes that seemed to miss nothing, she took her seat and began proceedings with brisk efficiency. Calling case number 8-7542, Crawford versus Crawford, the bailiff announced. Amanda and her attorney approached their table. The judge looked expectantly toward me, and then to the empty space beside me. "Mr. Crawford, are you representing yourself today?" Judge Winters asked. Before I could answer, the courtroom door opened, and Jake strode in, briefcase in hand, looking every inch the legal powerhouse he had become. Heads turned as he made his way confidently to my table. "Apologies for the slight delay, Your Honor," Jake said smoothly. "Jake Crawford, representing the respondent, Lewis Crawford." The look on Amanda's face was exactly as Jake had predicted, utter shock, giving way to dawning horror. Her attorney frowned, clearly confused by this unexpected development. "Your Honor," Amanda's lawyer began, "we were under the impression that Mr. Crawford would be representing himself." "That impression was incorrect," Jake replied, calmly opening his briefcase. "And before we proceed, there are several matters the court should be aware of regarding undisclosed assets and fraudulent financial activities by the petitioner." Amanda leaned over frantically, whispering to her attorney, who looked increasingly concerned. The judge observed this exchange with raised eyebrows. "Mr. Crawford," Amanda's lawyer said, addressing Jake with new caution in his voice, "perhaps we could discuss these matters privately before proceeding." Jake smiled, the same smile I remembered from our childhood, when he knew he had the braider, winning hand in poker. "I think these matters are best addressed on the record, counsel. My client has been operating in good faith, while your client has been systematically attempting to defraud both my client and potentially this court." Judge Winters leaned forward. "Those are serious allegations, Mr. Crawford. I assume you have evidence to support them." "Extensive evidence, Your Honor," Jake confirmed, pulling out a thick folder, "including documentation of a fraudulent loan application bearing my client's forged signature, undisclosed personal accounts containing marital assets and communications, explicitly detailing the petitioner's intent to mislead regarding financial matters." Amanda's face had drained of all color. Her attorney accepted the copies Jake handed him, flipping through them with growing alarm. "Your Honor, we request a brief recess to review these documents," Amanda's lawyer said, his confident demeanor notably diminished. "Granted." 30 minutes, Judge Winters declared, fixing Amanda with a stern look before rising. As the judge departed, Amanda turned to me, her expression a mixture of fury and disbelief. "What is this?" she hissed. "Where did you find a lawyer?" Jake stepped between us, his presence protective and imposing. "He doesn't have to afford me," he said, his voice carrying just enough for those nearby to hear. "I'm his older brother. And you should know, Miss Crawford, that in my 15 years of practice, I've never lost a case involving the kind of financial misconduct you've engaged in." Amanda's lawyer pulled her away for a hurried conference in the corner of the courtroom. Their discussion grew increasingly animated, with Amanda shaking her head repeatedly, while her attorney appeared to be strongly advising a change in strategy. When court resumed 30 minutes later, the atmosphere had transformed completely. Amanda's confident smirk had vanished, replaced by a tight-lipped expression of barely controlled panic. Her attorney addressed the court with noticeably less confidence. "Your Honor, in light of new information, my client would like to propose a revised settlement agreement." Jake shook his head slightly. "Your Honor, given the evidence of deliberate misconduct, we are no longer interested in the petitioner's proposals. We have prepared our own motion for division of assets that accounts for the petitioner's actions, including reimbursement of misappropriated funds." The proceedings that followed were nothing short of a legal dismantling. Jake methodically presented evidence of Amanda's financial deceptions, from hidden accounts to manipulated expense records. The fraudulent loan application proved particularly damaging, with Judge Winters noting the serious nature of forgery. By early afternoon, it was clear which way the case was heading. Judge Winters ruled largely in my favor, awarding me the house that Amanda had been so determined to take, given that my contributions to its purchase and maintenance had been disproportionately larger. Amanda was ordered to repay the fraudulent loan and return significant funds she had diverted from our joint accounts for personal use. As the judge delivered her final ruling, Amanda sat rigidly in her chair, the carefully constructed future she had planned crumbling around her. When court adjourned, she stormed out without a word to either me or her visibly disappointed attorney. Standing on the courthouse steps afterward, I felt a complex mixture of emotions, vindication, relief, lingering sadness for what could have been, and profound gratitude for my brother's intervention. "Thank you doesn't begin to cover it," I told Jake as we walked to our cars. He clapped a hand on my shoulder. "That's what family is for Lewis. Real family. Not people who see you as a means to an end." The months following the divorce were a time of rebuilding. I remained in our house, though. At first it felt haunted by memories of a relationship that had been more illusion than reality. Gradually, I reclaimed the space, repainting rooms, rearranging furniture, and removing the expensive decorations Amanda had insisted upon. My relationship with Jake grew stronger than ever. We spoke weekly, and he visited whenever his busy schedule allowed. Through him, I reconnected with other family members I had unintentionally distanced myself from during my marriage. The support system I had neglected for years welcomed me back without judgment. At work, I refocused on my career, but with a healthier perspective. I still worked hard and sought advancement, but no longer to fund someone else's unreasonable expectations. 6 months after the divorce, the promotion I had previously missed finally materialized, bringing both increased responsibility and better compensation. The hardest part of healing was confronting how I had allowed myself to be manipulated for so long. There had been warning signs from the beginning that I had willfully ignored, choosing to see what I wanted rather than what was actually before me. Through counseling and self-reflection, I learned to forgive myself for these blind spots, while becoming more attuned to them for the future. Amanda attempted to contact me several times after the dust settled. First, with angry accusations. Then, with surprising attempts at reconciliation, when her post-divorce life didn't proceed as she had planned. I maintained firm boundaries, responding only through legal channels when necessary. I learned she eventually moved to another state for a fresh start. Sometimes I wondered if she had found what she was looking for, or if she was still chasing an elusive vision of success and status that would forever remain just out of reach. But those thoughts grew less frequent, as my own life expanded in new directions. 2 years after the divorce, I sold the house and moved into a comfortable condo closer to downtown. The change of scenery completed my transition to this new chapter of my life. I developed new friendships, rediscovered old hobbies, and even cautiously began dating again, though with a wisdom born from experience. Looking back now, I realized that losing what I thought I had actually freed me to find what I truly needed. The marriage that I fought so hard to preserve had been constraining me in ways I couldn't recognize while inside it. The painful ending led to a new beginning that, while unexpected, proved infinitely more authentic. The most valuable lesson I learned through this ordeal wasn't about marriage or divorce or even love. It was about the quiet strength that comes from self-respect and the importance of surrounding yourself with people who value you for who you are, not what you can provide. It was about recognizing that sometimes what seems like a devastating loss is actually the universe clearing space for something better to enter. Today, I no longer harbor resentment toward Amanda. Instead, I feel gratitude for the growth her betrayal ultimately sparked in my life. Sometimes the most valuable gifts come wrapped in the most painful packages. If you are going through something similar right now, know that the darkness eventually gives way to light. The key is to keep moving forward one step at a time. Have you ever experienced a betrayal that eventually led to a positive change in your life? Share your story in the comments below. If this video resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to hear more real-life experiences. Remember, even in our darkest moments, we are never truly alone. Thank you for listening, and I wish you strength on your own journey, whatever challenges you may be facing.